She walked into the bank with nothing but hope. A small piece of paper that represented months of hard work and endless sacrifice. It wasn't just a check. It was a promise, a step toward a better life. But hope can be fragile in a world that still measures worth by the color of your skin. What happened next would not only shatter her trust, it would expose a truth hidden behind polite smiles and corporate posters. Because the woman they tried to humiliate wasn't just anyone's wife, and the man whose face they'd soon see would leave them speechless. For years, Angela Carter had done everything right. She worked 2 jobs, raised her daughter alone, and kept her faith steady even when life wasn't kind. She believed that if you stayed honest and patient, the world would eventually return that same respect. After months of late nights managing paperwork for a small cleaning business, Angela finally secured a large corporate contract. The check she held that morning wasn't just payment, it was validation, a sign that her hard work had finally been noticed. The sky was clear as she parked her modest car outside the grand, glass-fronted branch of First Horizon Bank. She had driven past it countless times, never feeling quite fancy enough to walk through its gleaming doors. But today, she told herself, she belonged there. She'd earned her place. Inside, the air smelled of polish and perfume, the kind of quiet luxury that made some people feel important and others invisible. Angela waited her turn, clutching the check gently. She smiled at the teller when it was her turn, a tall woman with a sharp uniform and sharper eyes. The teller's smile didn't reach her eyes. She glanced at the check, then at Angela, her lips curling in a way that said more than words ever could. Angela didn't know it yet, but this simple transaction would soon reveal how deep prejudice can still run, even in a place built on trust. The teller barely looked at the check before sighing loudly, as if Angela's presence was an inconvenience. She tapped her nails against the counter, squinting at the name on the paper. "This check looks suspicious," she murmured, loud enough for others in line to hear. Angela froze. Suspicious. It was written directly from the company she had just contracted with, the same company whose offices were a block away. Angela tried to stay calm. Her voice shook slightly as she explained, "It's for my business. But before she could finish, the teller turned to a co-worker and whispered. A smirk passed between them. One rolled her eyes. The other pointed discreetly toward Angela, then giggled. It wasn't just embarrassment that washed over her. It was humiliation. The quiet kind that seeps into your bones and makes you feel small. Minutes passed. The teller pretended to verify the check, but never made a call. Instead, she crossed her arms. "You know, these kinds of checks can be fake," she said, her tone laced with accusation, not caution. Angela felt the sting of those words. The line behind her grew longer, and she could feel eyes on her back. She wasn't sure if anyone believed her, or if they cared. Finally, with an exaggerated sigh, the teller held the check up to the light. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tore it in half. The sound of tearing paper was deafening. Angela gasped, stepping forward in disbelief. The teller dropped the shredded pieces into the trash. "Next," she said coldly, waving for the next customer as though nothing had happened. Angela stood frozen, eyes wide, her world spinning. She felt heat rush to her face, a mix of rage and heartbreak. She wanted to scream, to demand justice, but all she could manage was a whisper. "That was my payment." But no one responded. She turned and walked out, her eyes burning but her head held high. Outside, the autumn air felt heavier than before. She sat in her car, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. It wasn't just about the money. It was about dignity. For days, she told no one, not even her husband, David Carter, a man who believed in the power of justice. He was an FBI special agent known for his integrity, a man whose face was often featured in local news for community outreach programs. But Angela didn't want him to see her broken. She didn't want pity, only peace. Yet peace rarely stays long when truth demands to be seen. A week later, Angela drove past the same bank on her way to pick up her daughter. Something new caught her eye, a massive billboard above the bank's front doors. She slowed down. Her heart skipped. There, towering above the glass building, was the smiling face of her husband, Special Agent David Carter, featured in the bank's new diversity campaign. The tagline read, "Community, integrity, equality. We stand with those who serve." Angela's breath caught. She parked across the street, staring in stunned silence. The irony burned in her chest. The same institution that had torn her down was now using her husband's face to advertise the very values they denied her. The next morning, David went to the bank, not as an FBI agent on duty, but as a husband seeking truth. Cameras caught the moment he entered, the same teller behind the counter. Her expression shifted instantly when she recognized him. The man whose image hung above her building, the man whose reputation was synonymous with justice. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough. The branch manager hurried over, apologetic smiles and panicked words filling the air. For the first time, the teller looked nervous. For the first time, she understood who she had humiliated. Angela stood quietly beside her husband as he requested the footage, the records, the receipts. He didn't demand revenge. He demanded accountability. And when he turned to the teller, his voice was calm, but his eyes said everything. "You judged her because of her skin. You tore her check. Now you're the one exposed." In that moment, the silence inside the bank was louder than any apology could ever be. The bank issued a formal apology, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The story spread through the city. A bank that claimed to value diversity had humiliated the wife of the man they'd chosen as the face of it. Corporate statements were drafted. The teller was reassigned. Yet no public statement could erase what Angela felt that day, the quiet violence of prejudice. But she didn't let it define her. Instead, she used it as fuel. With her husband's support, she filed an official complaint, not just for herself, but for others who didn't have the power to fight back. Months later, Angela opened her own business account at a different bank. On her desk sat a framed photo of the billboard, not as a symbol of bitterness, but as a reminder. The truth always reveals itself. She learned that dignity isn't something others give. It's something you never let them take. And for every person who's ever been made to feel less than, her story became a quiet anthem of resilience. Because racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers from behind a counter, hidden under professionalism and policy. But the moment it's exposed, the mask falls, and the truth shines through. Angela didn't get her check back, but she got something far more powerful, her voice, her pride, and a story that would make people think twice the next time they judge someone by the color of their skin. If this story made you feel something, don't just move on. Share it. Let Angela's story remind us all that silence helps injustice survive. Comment your thoughts, tell your own story, and subscribe to keep these voices alive. Because every time we speak up, we write another chapter in the fight for dignity. And one day, maybe the world will finally listen.